The Detroit Lions head coach, Dan Campbell, had no idea he would be the topic of discussion on the St. Brown podcast. Fred Warner appeared this week, or at least the episode was released this week, and he had a lot to say about Dan Campbell and what the Lions should not be doing, and maybe he's doing a whole lot too much. We're going to get into it right now.
Pressured by Hutchinson, he goes down again.
All right, welcome into Rockhound Detroit Lions. I'm your host, Will Rock. Appreciate each and every one of you joining me for tonight's video. This kind of caught me by surprise. And if you guys haven't already heard it, or I'm sure you've seen some of the news flashes, maybe some of the short clips, Fred Warner kind of went in on Dan Campbell in this episode, and we're going to play it. I'm going to show you exactly what went down here. We'll talk about it. Does he have a right to say what he's saying? Is he right about what he said about Dan Campbell going too hard, too much, causing too many problems for the team? And maybe he's right. Maybe he's not. I'm going to let you decide. Tonight's just about, well, I guess it's about what you think. Let's just go right to the video here and get into it. Fred Warner on the St. Brown podcast, courtesy of the St. Brown podcast.
It's because we've had so many injuries, right? Like we have had a bunch of injuries since I've been here, but a lot of it is because like we have an older roster, right? We train harder than a lot of people in the NFL when it comes to how we practice and do all these other little things. So, it's just a combination of all that, and it's football at the end of the day. Like it's 100% injury guarantee rate, right? So, okay, 49er injured stars. Look at that.
Bro, I feel like we've had hella injuries
boy.
too. Like the Lions have hella injuries every year too. I'm like, fuck.
Y'all go hard. Old Dan Campbell be over there telling y'all to bite kneecaps. So at some point you going,
Wait, so do you guys go full tackle in camp?
No, we would never do that.
See, we going live.
See, and at some point, Dan gonna come to his senses, man, and be like, "Listen, this ain't making nobody better, brother. All right, we can still get our work in without bringing guys to the ground."
Yeah, I think, bro. Every time when new players come to our team, they look at me, look at us during practice. They be in the locker room like, "Y'all practice like this all the time,
dog."
I just be like, "Yeah, this is all I know, bro." Like,
yeah. I think
that's crazy.
I get the mindset that he's trying to instill in y'all, but because he's obviously saying you can't become better at tackling unless you practice tackling, right? Like I'm sure that's the mindset, but I mean, tackling is about just getting all the way there, wrapping a guy, thudding a guy, wrapping him, and then you just only got to do the extra, bring him to the ground, right? And like half the time, guys are just in desperation trying to get somebody on the ground, where you're putting yourself and the person who you're tackling at risk, right? Then that's improper tackling technique. But if you're doing it correctly, you can be in a position where you can tackle and be like, okay, I ain't bring you all the way to the ground, right? So,
yeah, that's facts. Well, talking about you guys this year, obviously you guys didn't win the Super Bowl.
Hold on. What did he just say? He said that's facts. So does St. Brown agree with him? Does St. Brown agree with Fred Warner that the facts are you shouldn't be going to the ground? You shouldn't be doing live tackling. Dan's going too hard. Honestly, listen, the Lions have been through a lot. They've had a ton of injuries over the last couple of years. And this is where I'm going to push back. And I know a lot of you are going to have a ton to say in the comments. You're probably not going to agree with me, and that's totally fine. But the injuries aren't happening in camp as much as they're happening during the season. Am I right or am I right? I would understand if Fred Warner was saying, look, man, this isn't making you guys better because you're going through all these injuries. So what's the point of going through a full tackling drill in practice if all you're doing is coming out injured? And now your team is at, the detriment of practicing too hard, going, full live tackling too often. And now you don't even have guys to play with throughout the season. That part, I would say, would make a lot of sense. However, the injuries are not happening during practice as much as they are happening in the season. Now, Ennis Rakestraw had a chest injury during practice this year that I believe happened right after a tackle. Kirby's knee issue isn't from a tackle. Brian Branch's Achilles isn't from a tackle in practice. Josh Pascal's issues aren't from a tackle. Marcus Davenport issue, that happened in game week 2 versus the Bears, tackling Caleb Williams. Who else can I name off the top of my head? Well, Lee McNeil, that happened in game. Aiden Hutchinson happened in game. Cleo Dorsey happened in game. I mean, the list goes on. The only player that we really lost, I think, that was in camp was Levi Onwuzurike. And even that happened in OTAs. So, look, I think that there's something to Dan Campbell wanting his players to practice hard. And there is something to practicing full form technique in actually bringing some players to the ground. But I will side with Fred Warner on this part. At some point, you don't have to do it, right? Like during the season, probably shouldn't do it at all. Matter of fact, that's stupidity in my opinion. You're already gone through the season. You're already hitting players live every week. There's no reason to do it during the season. I can't say definitively that Dan is doing it during the season. Maybe after preseason, probably don't need to do it as much. Maybe a couple of times if you need to get the guys fired up. But other than that, man, I think that once you get through training camp, I think that it's time to probably pull back the reins on the full tackling drills. The more collisions these guys have, obviously the less time they're going to have to play in the league. I think it's the amount of collisions times days kind of adds up to when these players are done, right? There's only so many collisions you can take. Fred Warner, man, I think he has a good point. Does St. Brown admit, that maybe those are facts, that we don't need to be doing this all the time? Or was he just saying, hey, it's facts, talking about the tackling drill part of it, that you don't need to go to the ground? And I don't want to sit here and repeat myself, but you tell me in the comments below. What do you think about the full tackling drills? When should it stop? Does Dan Campbell do it too much? And is Dan Campbell responsible for all of these injuries? Me? It's a hard no. I don't think that he is. But pull those reins back a little bit once we get out of training camp and into the preseason, man. Those guys have done enough. And we need to see him this year on the field and not on the sidelines. So Dan Campbell, you need to go have a talk with your buddy Fred Warner, because he's calling you out, man, biting those kneecaps. You're biting them one too many times, and you're going to cause some injury to your players, and maybe it's time to call it quits with the live tackling drills here in 2026. Do me a favor, subscribe to DetroitFootballJournal.com. On your way out, make sure you like, subscribe, and hype. But DetroitFootball.com, man, that is where you're going to get a free 6-month subscription right now. All you have to do is go in and put your email, and we'll see you on the other side. Take care. Go on Pride. Adios.
Pressured by